Flying a cave is a lot like flying in an airplane. You trust the airline to keep you safe. The staff has been trained. It's not the pilot's first time flying. The equipment has gone through multiple safety checks before the plane even leaves the ground. And most importantly, when there's bad weather, bad storm, heavy rain, both you and the airplane stay on the ground until you get the all clear. So it might not seem inherently dangerous, but if you think about it, if something goes wrong, your life is on the line. And that's like the cave exploration business. The defendant, Cave of the Breezes Expeditions, runs cave tours. Its customers trusted Cave of the Breezes to keep them safe. Max Petunia was one of those customers, and the defendant did not keep Max safe. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Max. He's a teenager with a bright future ahead of him. He was at the very beginning of his professional hockey playing career with the Pitbulls. And on April 30th, 2017, all that changed when he had the misfortune to visit the defendant's business. Now, imagine you're watching Max and his team. They arrive at the Cave of the Breezes. They're really excited. This is a trip that the team takes every year, a way for the old players and the new players to come together and bond with their coach before the new season begins. They meet their tour guide, Cindy Cooney. They get a brief lecture and go into the cave. Suddenly, Cindy abandons them, saying she forgot her safety pack. She leaves the cave and leaves Max and his teammates alone. Then suddenly, they start to feel a rumbling. And then just like that, the front of the cave is covered in mud. There's a landslide. Max and his teammates are trapped in the darkness. And you'll hear that they're terrified. They had just been outside in the daylight, just steps away, just moments before. Max and his teammates were trapped in the cave, not for one day, not for 2 days, but for 3 whole days. With little food and water, they had nothing to do but worry and wait. Now, meanwhile, outside the cave, the defendant is scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, trying to come up with a way to get Max and his teammates out of the cave. You'll hear that the defendant didn't take proper safety precautions, and that because they had to rush this job to get Max and his teammates out, they come to rely on Howard Scent and this experimental robot technology. You'll hear that the purpose of this technology was originally to go to the moon, and they decide to use it to go into the cave to get Max and his teammates out. Max was the last one to be rescued, and when it was his turn inside the robot pod, it twisted and turned, malfunctioning and crushing and breaking his arms and legs. Now Max may never play hockey again. Max trusted the defendant's business to keep him safe, and that trust was violated. Now, we'll prove to you that it was the defendant's negligence that led to the landslide on April 30, 2017, and Max's injuries caused by the robot pod. And because we're the plaintiff, we have to prove this claim to you by a preponderance of the evidence. Now that means, as you hear the evidence, you just have to find our story is more believable than the defendant's. Now there are some facts that, just like in real life, could go either way, like a gray area. But as you hear all the evidence and consider the two sides, you just have to find our claim a little more likely than not that it was the defendant's negligence that caused Max's injuries. And as you hear the evidence, there are 2 points I'd like you to keep in mind. The first, this cave-in on April 30th was foreseeable. And second, Bobby Daly and Cave of the Breezes did not take proper precautions. Turning to my first point, this cave-in was foreseeable. You'll meet our expert witness, Dr. Cross, and she'll explain to you that there are warning signs that precede a landslide: heavy rain, fallen trees, high precipitation. You'll hear that there was a landslide in this exact same spot many years ago, and that prior landslide activity can help indicate that another one will occur. You'll hear that Bobby Daly and Cave of the Breezes observed and ignored these very warning signs. And that brings me to my second point. Bobby Daly did not take proper precautions. You'll hear from Dr. Cross that there were no extra provisions inside the cave. There was limited food and water. They were running out of time. You'll hear that Bobby Daly came to rely on this experimental, untested technology, and that when it was Max's turn to be inside that robot, it injured him. And you'll meet Max himself. He'll take the stand and he'll tell you how those injuries continue to affect him today. Dr. Cross will also explain that Bobby Daly should have closed the business that day. Not forever, not even for an entire day, but just long enough to get a safety check and get that all clear, just like when you're in an airplane and there's bad weather and warning signs to be nervous about. And you'll hear that Bobby Daly didn't do any of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, those are the 2 points I'd like you to keep in mind as you hear the evidence. This cave-in was foreseeable, and Bobby Daly didn't take the proper precautions. And we'll prove to you that that negligence led to Max Petunia's injury. Thank you.
All right, defense.
Good afternoon, Max. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Max Petunia, and I play hockey for the Pitbulls.
Okay. Max, I want to talk a little bit about your background and what happened on April 30th. How old were you that day?
That April 30th was my birthday, my 18th birthday.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you played for the Pitbulls. Did you go to college before that?
No, after high school, I decided to join the senior team from the junior team.
Okay. Now, Max, on April 30th, 2017, your 18th birthday, what were you doing that day?
That was the day of our Cave of Breezes trip. We went there as a sort of team bonding exercise to explore this cave.
And what happened on that trip?
On that trip, that was where the landslide happened.
And can you describe what that landslide was like?
Sure. So it was terrifying. What I remember when we were inside the cave, there was this low rumbling, and then next thing I know, the entrance that we came into was completely covered with dirt.
Now, Max, I want to rewind a little bit and talk about before the landslide and before you went on this trip. When you arrived at Cave of the Breezes, what were the weather conditions like that day?
It was raining a little bit, but I remember it wasn't as raining as bad as it was raining the day before.
And before you went on the trip, did you or the team have to do anything to prepare?
Yeah, so part of going on this trip, we had to sign this waiver form, so I ended up having to give that to our coach.
Okay. Did you review this waiver?
It was one of those things that I sort of quickly looked through. I was 17 at the time, so my mom had to sign on my behalf, or sometimes there were instances which I signed for her, but got her permission. So I don't really remember whether or not it was her signature or I signed it, but I looked briefly at it, yeah.
And when you arrived at Cave of the Breezes, did you meet anyone or talk to anyone before going into the cave?
Well, when we first got to the cave, we looked like we were the only tour group there. And sort of we got off the tour bus, and our guide brought us into the cave.
Okay. Now, did this guy talk to you at all or say anything to you?
Yeah, so I think her name was Cindy. She gave us about a 30-minute lecture. She had us put on those minor hard hats that you see with the light on top, and she just gave this 30-minute safety lecture, and she seemed really nervous. She was stumbling over her words. Yeah, and the whole warning basically was just in the event of emergency to stick together.
Did she mention any type of emergency specifically?
No, I mean, that was the weird part, is that one of my teammates actually had to ask her about, you know, what about landslides? And she seemed kind of, again, nervous, and then sort of said the same warning about in the event of emergency, stick together.
Now, Max, I want to jump ahead to after the landslide happened and the aftermath of it. So right after the entrance was covered, what did you and your teammates do?
We were terrified, and we immediately started to sort of look around ourselves for other exits, and we couldn't see anything.
Okay. Did you have any supplies with you?
We knew this was a 2-hour trip, so some of us brought like water and a protein bar, but that was really about it.
Did you locate any other supplies in the cave?
No, immediately just sort of looking around our surroundings, there was no emergency supplies that we could see.
And when you were in the cave, did you have any way to communicate with the outside?
A few of us brought our cell phones, but once that wall came down, they just stopped working.
And when you say wall came down, you mean the entrance being covered?
Yeah, the entrance to the cave when it was completely covered.
Okay. And Max, how long were you inside the cave for?
They told us it was about 3 days when we eventually got out, but it felt a lot longer just being in, complete darkness for 3 days certainly felt a lot longer than 3 days.
I can imagine. Now, Max, can you talk about how you did ultimately get out of the cave?
Yeah, so on day 3, there was another low rumbling, and a lot of us were worried that this was just another landslide or another cave-in, but it was a robot sort of emerged through the entrance of the cave.
And what did this robot do, or what did you do with this robot?
Yeah, so this robot, there were no controls, but you had to go one at a time, and you lie down on the robot, and it was these automatic restraints, and it pushed you out of the cave.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to ask the witness to step down out of the stand in front of the jury just to present his positioning within the pod.
He's just going to demonstrate it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, I just asked that I be able to watch as well.
Okay.
Okay, Max, if you could just step down right in front of the jury and face the jury. Okay. Max, can you just demonstrate how your body was positioned in the robot pod and just explain what it was like?
Sure. So we had to lie down completely flat, and you put your arms just like this, and they locked in automatically, and then the machine started to move.
And then what happened when it was your turn inside the pod?
Well, I got in there, and everybody else had already gotten through, and about halfway through the passage, the right arm restraint completely twisted my arm around, and the left leg restraint completely twisted my left leg around.
Okay, thank you, Max. You may retake the stand. Now, Max, how big was this pod?
Really no bigger than a twin-size bed.
And could you see anything?
Not from what I remember, no.
And when you said the restraints twisted, what did that feel like?
It was awful. I've never felt that type of pain before. And my arm completely twisted around and actually broke 2 places.
Okay. Well, it looks like you made a full recovery. Can you explain to the jury what your recovery process was like?
Sure. Yeah. So
You may answer.
I was brought to the hospital and I made a recovery based on being without food and water for 3 days, and then my arm and my leg both completely recovered from being broken, but I still have emotional and mental distress.
And what do you mean by emotional and mental distress?
As a result of the accident, I suffer from anxiety and have to take medication for that.
Are you still able to play hockey?
I'm still able to be on the team, but I'm not contributing the same way I used to.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Daly, I want to talk about late winter, early spring 2017, some of these warning signs. Now, Ms. Daly, when you bought Cave of the Breezes and took over the business, you did your due diligence, correct?
Yes.
And some of that due diligence involved talking to your insurance company, correct?
Yep, I asked them some questions.
Right. And those questions included what dangers or hazards to be aware of for your business, yes?
Yeah.
And the hazards they told you to look out
Objection,
for.
hearsay.
I'm sorry, yeah. I'll hear you.
Your Honor, assuming I'm heard outside the presence of the jury, I believe this witness will testify as to the specific warning signs its insurance company told Cope about, and it's not hearsay or meets the hearsay exception because it's being submitted to show it put Bobby Daly on notice of the existence of warning signs.
To keep an eye out for them?
Yes.
So whether or not it was true that those are in fact warning signs is irrelevant because it's really just a matter of what this person did as a result of hearing that?
Yes, notice and effect officer.
Well, that's the notice exception. I'm just making sure that. Anything else from the defense?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. It is overruled. So I just one thing I want to put out there as because I'm not going to give a lot of feedback, but anytime someone puts a notice exception out, we always want to think in terms of our response being, then we'd ask that there be an appropriate instruction to the jury that they only consider it for the notice purpose and not for its truth.
Would it be the person who make the objection or
Yeah. Right. So you get the objection, they give the notice exception, and then the person who makes the objection says, Your Honor, then we just ask that the jury be given an instruction not to consider it for the truth of the matter.
So, Ms. Daly, your insurance company told you a couple hazards to look out for, and one of those hazards was to look for earth movement, yes?
yeah.
And trees falling over, yes?
It would only depend if it was uprooted from the ground.
But your insurance company did tell you to look for trees that were no longer upright, correct?
Yes, but it depends on what the tree was used for.
But just the fact that trees had fallen over, correct? Yes.
You could say that.
Okay. Now, Ms. Daly, you're on site at your business every day, yes?
Yes.
And you, in fact, walk the grounds with your dogs every morning, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Daly, I want to talk about late winter and early spring 2017, and I'm specifically referring to January, February, March, and April 2017, okay?
Mhm.
Now, you said that you noticed there were downed trees that winter, correct?
There were a couple, yeah.
Near the cave entrance,
Yeah.
correct? And you're also aware that there was a tree blocking the main road to Cave of the Breezes on the morning of April 30th, yes?
That day there was, yeah.
And you said that you noticed during that time period, again, January, February, March, April 2017, you noticed that there was lots of snow, yes?
A little bit of snow, but in March there wasn't any snow. It was more so rain.
Okay. A lot of rain, so overall it was a wet spring, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Ms. Daly, I want to talk about the inspections that are done for your land. Now, through 2016, these inspections were done on an annual basis, it's fair to say, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And it costs money to do these inspections. That's correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a business expense that I had.
And in fact, you thought that these inspections were too expensive, correct?
Too expensive? I don't know, but they were pricey.
Okay. And the last one was done in 2016, you said, yes?
Yes, a year before the landslide.
But you said it was done sometime in 2016, yes?
I don't remember exactly, but 2016 was a year before 2017.
Right, because you didn't retain a copy of this 2016 report, did you?
No, I did not.
And you're also aware that the inspection company's records burned,
Yeah,
correct?
I had nothing to do with that, but yeah.
Right, so, but either way, no copy of this 2016 report exists, correct?
Unfortunately, the place burned down.
So this report from sometime in 2016 could have been from January 1st, 2016, yes?
Sure, you can pick any date in 2016. It could have been then.
Okay, so it also could have been December 31st, 2016.
Yep.
Okay. But in 2017, you saw these warning signs your inspection company, your insurance company told you about, down trees, earth movement, and you did not call your inspection company to do a survey, did you?
No, because we just had one done in 2016.
Right, but the next one wasn't planned for 2019, right?
Yeah, but the landslide happened in 2017, so we were still within a year.
Right, but we have to take your word for it because no copy of the 2016 report exists. Now, Ms. Daly, I want to talk about Cave of the Breezes safety plans. Now, you said Chase Quinn handled training all of your tour guides, correct?
Yes.
And it was just Chase Quinn. He was in charge of all those operations.
Yeah, he has 25 years of experience. I do not.
Right. So, Cave of the Breezes also has a safety policy and procedure for guiding and leading tour groups. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you did not write this policy. Chase Quinn did, correct?
Yes, he had the 25 years of experience.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Your Honor, may I receive what she refers to?
Now, Ms. Daly, I just handed you a document, and at the top of this document, it says Cave of the Breezes Expeditions Policies and Procedures Guiding and Leading Tour Groups. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is the policy that Chase Quinn wrote, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like plaintiff moves to admit what has been pre-marked as Exhibit B as Trial Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, trial exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. May also publish copies to the jury.
You may.
Now, Ms. Daly, I'm going to review portions of this document and call your attention to them. And if you could just follow along silently as I do that. Now, the very first sentence in this document says, remember, most tour groups are composed of mostly first-time cavers. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And Max Petunia was a first-time caver, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now jumping down to point 2. The last sentence says, there is never any reason for you as a guide to separate from your group. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
But on April 30th, Cindy wasn't with Max's tour group at the time the landslide happened, was she?
No.
In fact, she was outside with you, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
Okay. So she was in violation of this policy right here, correct?
Well, she had to get her emergency pack. The next one says always have your emergency pack. It could be
Right.
the difference between life or death.
But she didn't bring the group with her to go retrieve her safety pack, did she? She left them inside the cave.
Yeah, they were in the cave.
Okay, now jumping down to point 5, Ms. Daly. The first sentence in point 5 says, have an emergency plan and discuss what will be done if something goes wrong.
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And the last sentence in paragraph 5 says, the group must understand that you make the decisions in case of an emergency. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Daly, you said that after the landslide happened, you called 911, correct?
Yes.
And did a head count to make sure everyone was
Yes.
accounted for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But Ms. Daly, within this document, it doesn't say call 911, does it?
No, but it's what we discussed should be done if something goes wrong. we can't write in this document all of the possible emergencies that could happen in a cave-in. So no, it's technically not there, but it's discussed. That was what we discussed should be done.
Right, so it doesn't say call 911, and it doesn't say do a head count.
Specifically, no, but it's what we discussed should be done.
And Ms. Daly, this document also doesn't say where to find supplies, does it?
No.
And the reason why it doesn't say where to find supplies is because there are no supplies left inside the cave, are there?
Well, we didn't leave any supplies in the cave.
And Ms. Daly, you're aware that it took 37 days to ultimately clear out the entrance to Cave of the Breezes, correct?
Yeah, that's why it was so important that we get them out of the cave quickly.
Right, you had to act quickly.
Yes.
Right. And you had no time to use a traditional method such as a bulldozer, correct?
Well, because of the size of the landslide, we didn't have enough time.
Right. So you had to come to an agreement with Howard Sent to use this experimental robot, correct?
Yeah, lucky enough he had technology that could help us save the lives of everyone in the hockey team.
And you're aware that technology's original purpose is to go to the moon, correct?
I believe so. That was the purpose of it.
And you had no time to test that equipment, did you?
No, because we had to get them out of the cave. They would have died.
And because you had no time to test it, that robot injured Max Petunia, correct?
Unfortunately, yes, but he did save his life, so he unfortunately got injured, but he's alive.
Now, Miss Daly, prior to owning Cave of the Breezes expeditions, you had no prior cave tour exploration.
Nope,
Experience.
my family owned a sporting store.
Miss Daly, isn't it true you've never even been in a cave?
No, I haven't.
So it's fair to say you've never stepped foot in a cave at all.
No, I'm claustrophobic, so I can't even imagine what Max and his hockey team went through being stuck in the cave. That's why I did everything I could to make sure that I got them out as quickly as possible so they wouldn't have to be in there any longer than they had to.
Right, which was 3 days.
Yeah, pretty good.
No further questions, Your Honor. Permission
All right.
to retrieve document.
You may redirect.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Okay. You gotta get going.
Aye.
Okay. Then you still have one witness.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be your witness.
Great.
Will you record will you record like the notes and stuff after feedback?
the feedback. I'm not gonna give too much feedback. Most of my feedback's gonna be watch the video and with the eye on what feedback you got in the halftime.